Hi, my name is Dominick Zirilli. I have over 20 years culinary experience, and I'm currently the corporate chef at Thomas Foods USA. Today's video is all about braising tips and techniques. What I love about braising is that I can take a very economical piece of meat and I can turn it into a masterpiece. So when we're braising, it's all about technique. We can always change the cuts of meat, we can change some of the ingredients, but it's all about technique. So for instance here, we could take a lamb shank, right, a tough part, a working part of the animal. We could take the lamb shoulder, again, another tough part, has more bone in there, has a lot of that collagen running through there, connective tissue. Or what we're gonna focus on today are actually these bone-in lamb stew pieces that come from the shoulder. While they may all look different, they all are gonna be cooked the same exact way. We're just gonna change the time a little bit. So for all you fact checkers out there, we're gonna start off with the technical definition of braising. All we're gonna do is take some great quality meat, we're gonna sear it off, we're gonna add a little bit of liquid, put a tight sealing lid, throw it in the oven at a low temperature, and cook it till it's done. If you've ever looked through a cookbook and you saw the term fricasseing, or is it fricasseing? Just know that it's almost the same thing as braising. You're taking small pieces of meat, you're doing the same cooking technique, you may finish it off with a little bit of cream, but now you've learned 2 techniques in one day. So now let's get into the meat and potatoes of how we do the braising. We talked about why we do braise, but now let's show how we do it. We want cooking to be fun, so please don't think that there's any hard and fast instructions here, but make sure, the only thing I ask, make sure that you season every step of the way. So we're gonna go with salt and pepper, but you can use anything you like. If you wanna put garlic powder, if you wanna use some of your favorite spices that you've grown up in a jar using, be more than happy to do that. Some people will dust it with flour to get a nice, better sear on it. We're gonna avoid that step here because sometimes people have a little intolerance to gluten. So if we avoid that now, we don't have to worry about who can have this dish later on and who can't. So we're gonna start with salt and pepper, just because that pretty much goes in every dish that we create. And we use kosher salt, right? Just because it's bigger, it sprinkles from the hand a little better. Don't worry about over salting at this point. It's not a big deal because we're gonna be putting some liquids that are in there that won't have salt content to them. So it's all gonna kind of balance out and we're gonna readjust as we go on. Now let's get some pepper on there. I like the coarse ground pepper. It tends to give a little more oomph to it, a little bit more flavor to the final dish. So as we've done that, we're gonna make sure that our pan's nice and hot, and we're gonna take a little bit of the fat that we're gonna use. We're gonna use some olive oil here, but you could use any vegetable oil, or you could use like a bacon grease if you'd like to. Whatever you want, remember this is your dish. You wanna go with what you like. All we're gonna do is we're gonna put each piece in there, make sure that it's on the bottom of the pan, make sure that it's got good coverage, and that it's gonna get a nice, good sear on them. If your pan's not big enough, you can do them in batches. You don't have to do it all at once. This is gonna take us about 3 to 4 minutes on each side, and then we're gonna go to the next step. Okay, that first important step is just about done. We've seared the meat off. It's been seasoned, so we know that we're building a flavor here. You wanna get a nice brown color on the outside of there. And then all we're gonna do is we're just gonna take this and set it aside. No, it's not done cooking yet, so don't worry. The magic has not happened yet. But every step that we do is done with intent, and it leaves something behind. So right now, we've got some juices left back from the lamb, and that's gonna be important to our final dish. So we're not getting rid of that, we're keeping it. If there was excess grease in there and you weren't comfortable with it, you thought it was a little too much, you could remove some of it, but you wanna try to keep as much flavor in there as possible. We want to add things that are gonna add to our final dish, and in here we got some parsnips, we got some carrots, we got some fennel, we got some onions, and all we're gonna do is we're just gonna take some of the vegetables here, and we're gonna let them start to brown a little bit. What they're gonna do is they're gonna change flavor a little bit by getting the caramelization here. The sugars are gonna start to react with that pan. And then 2, it's gonna build that next layer, right? That next stage that we're going for that final dish. Everything is with the end in mind here. As we're sauteing this off, we're gonna start to see some colors develop. And once we get it to where it's a little bit brown, they're not gonna soften all the way through, they're gonna cook in the liquid. We're gonna go and we're gonna add our next step. And for us, that's gonna be garlic. The reason I didn't add garlic in a little bit earlier is because I didn't want it to burn, right? Garlic is very temperamental and it burns easily and it doesn't taste as good once it's burnt. So I wanna make sure that I'm just getting color on here, I'm developing some of the flavors, and once I feel comfortable with that and I see the garlic start to get a little translucent, Now I'm going to the next step. Again, it's another addition of flavor. For me, since we're gonna add some tomato here, I'm gonna take some crushed tomatoes and I'm gonna add that now. And what I'm doing is I want these crushed tomatoes, you know, when you crush tomatoes, they get a little bit watery, so I want to reduce that down a little bit, and it's going to concentrate that flavor, and it's going to, again, add to the final dish. I'm going to let this go probably about 2 minutes, minute and a half, somewhere around there, and then once I see it thickened up a little bit, and you're going to smell you know, all your senses are involved here, and you're going to know that it's where you want it to be. And now I'm going to pick my final 2 liquids that are going to go in here. The first one's going to be alcohol. For me, because I like red wine. If you don't like alcohol, you can leave red wine out. You can go to a cola, which seems kind of odd, but it's got caramel in there, it's got sugar in there, and it's gonna add something to it, add a little depth and color to the dish. Or some people who do wanna stick with the alcohol, but they wanna go with like an IPA or something like that. I try to stick with what I know, and I'm gonna go with red wine here. The reason we're gonna add the alcohol before the stock is because we want to burn a little bit of that alcohol off, right? We don't want it to be too strong, and it doesn't take long. It'll take us about a minute and a half again for this. Remember, now we're doing combining everything, everything's marrying, everything is getting on the same page here. Once we feel that's good, and you'll smell it, you'll see the difference in color, we're gonna add some stock. You can use chicken stock, you can use vegetable stock, if you have beef stock, it doesn't matter, whatever you have available. Again, make this very approachable for you. You can even use tap water, but if you choose to go that way, remember, we're gonna have to, again, compensate with more seasoning in just a bit. So I'm gonna put about a cup and a half, but again, it depends on how much you're cooking here. Again, at this point, I want everything to marry together, so it's gotta simmer. We wanna make sure this liquid is warm when it goes into the oven. We do not want it to be cold, or we won't get the desired result. Now I'll take some herbs. I've got some rosemary, thyme, and some fresh bay leaf. We tied it up together here so we don't have to go fishing for it later on. Put that in there. So now we're gonna do a little more salt. A little more pepper. And I feel comfortable that this is gonna be right where I want it to be. As I put this lamb in there, you'll see there's even some juice that's on this plate, that's accumulated on this plate. That's gonna go back in. So now we're ready to finish this up. Get yourself a lid. This one's a nice, perfect match for this because it came with the pot, but if you don't have one, use some aluminum foil, make a nice tight seal on it. Let's get it to the oven, slow and low, go about your day, and we'll see you when it's time to serve. After the great braising unveil, you're gonna have one of 3 things can happen. One is it's gonna be perfect. The sauce is just the consistency you want. 2, it could be a little bit thick, so what are we gonna do? We're just gonna add a little bit of liquid to it, mix it in. If you have some stock or some water, will work just fine. And the third one is if it's a little too runny and maybe it doesn't have the consistency you're looking for, we're gonna do what we call a slurry. Simple mixture of cornstarch and water. About a 1-to-1, maybe 2-to-1 cornstarch to water. Little mix, overheat, into your sauce, give it a stir, 60 seconds, magic, it's thick. You're good to go. Hey, it's your last chance to add a little bit more flavor to this dish. Already tastes amazing, but if you want to sharpen it up a little bit, there's a couple things you could do. One is taking some citrus, whether it be lemon or orange, squeezing the juice in there, or just take a little bit of that rind and grate it over there. Another one is adding maybe a splash of sherry vinegar, some fresh herbs, or we could take some pickled vegetables. We have some pickled onion here, put that on top of the dish. It will give you not only the acidity you're looking for, but it'll give you a little bit of contrast and texture, which will make an amazing final meal for you and your guests. The unsung hero of braised dishes are that you have leftovers. So you're probably not gonna eat everything that first go around. Wrap them up and use them 2 or 3 days later. You shred that meat and you can use it in so many different applications. We're talking tacos, risotto, pastas, whatever you want to use them for, you're really going to be able to stretch that out to a second dish and again, enjoy it just as much as you did the first time. Thank you for sharing this braising journey with me. Please like and subscribe. The links are down below. Braise the roof.
What was that?